Okay guys, so this keeps defaulting to public and I don't know why, because I don't want it to be public right now. I want to just record this. I want to, and I've told some of you through the lives that I wanted to create a series on the Chris Watts case because, number one, I know the case very well and I deal with facts. So for people that want facts and are just coming into the case, every day I get emails, people coming into the case asking me very basic things that we've gone over many times. So a lot of times, I should say after probably March or April, we did a lot of lives on the case. And so the lives being so long, it's hard to point them in the right direction. So I just want to create a series here where people can watch who don't know anything about this case, or people that know something about the case, and just go over it again while everything is fresh in my head and I have access to all the files and everything. So what I'm going to start with is just the beginning and go up to the end. So those of you that don't know anything about the case, the first thing to know is that it's about a marriage. It's about a family. It's about the unthinkable. Okay, it's about, some consider a father snapping, but we've learned he didn't snap. Okay, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Let's look at face value what you see here when you learn about the case, like all of us. And I think when someone says, how did you learn about this case? Well, I learned about this case when I saw a man in Frederick, Colorado, standing on his front porch with his arms folded, and he was not in any real distress, not at all. No tears. And the subject matter was pretty bad because, you see, he didn't know where his wife and his wife was pregnant with their first son, or his two little daughters were, who were supposed to be starting their first day of school that day. And that was his first lie. He lied that they were starting next week and not that day. First lie. So as we see him, as I saw him, the first thing I said to my husband is, this guy is guilty. Okay? He mentions an emotional conversation that he had with Shannon, an emotional conversation that morning. Okay? And then he says, how much he wants them back, but he speaks in the past tense when he's talking about his family. Okay? So right away, that was very, very odd. Now, as we know more about that first day, we'll dive into a little deeper the stuff that happened that first day. But as we go into the next day, that was August 13th of 2018. And on the 14th is when he did this interview, okay, against his mother-in-law telling him he shouldn't do that. He did this interview. It was probably the greatest thing in the world because his guilt was so blatantly obvious. Anyway, we have that, right? So the next day, they put surveillance on him. That night of the 13th, he remained in the house, okay? The 14th, he went to stay the night with his friends, well, his wife's and his friends, Nick and Amanda Thayer. He never spent another night in his house because on the 15th, when he went down and took a lie detector test, he never got out of there. He spent the night in the Weld County Jail. And I can show you all of that. But that's not even the most gruesome part. He confessed on the 15th, 2 days after, not only to having a girlfriend, but that his first confession said that after being fed a line from the investigators that Shannon, his wife, killed the children and he killed Shannon. But instead of calling 911 or doing anything like that, what Chris did was drive them out to Survey 319, which was an oil field that he was working at that Monday morning, and he put Shannon in and buried her in a shallow grave, and that he put the girls in oil battery tanks, separate ones, okay? Now, they made him, during the interview confession, put on the picture of Survey 319 where everyone was. They went out there and did the recovery efforts. Well, they got Shannon first. And then the children, that took time, many, many hours to do the recovery efforts, and it wasn't, it was horrific, okay? And the workers that were involved in that needed to go to therapy. Of course, Chris didn't see anything because he didn't go to trial and took a plea deal and admitted to killing everyone. So that's the case we have now. Shannon and Chris Watts lived in Frederick, Colorado. Shannon was born in New Jersey. Her parents moved to North Carolina. Chris's family lived in North Carolina. And Shannon suffered from lupus and some other ailments, and she was at a really low time. And on Facebook, the wife of a cousin of Chris's, or some distant relation like that, knew Shannon through something and said, you should really meet my cousin-in-law, whatever he was. And Shannon kind of blew it off, and then she finally did meet him. And one of the things that she found endearing was that she was not feeling well. She was at a very low time, and that's normally when a narcissist, or predator is going to prey on someone, when they're at a really low time. So Shannon was in that time, by her own admission. And even her mother said, he let her sleep on his lap, even though he had to pee. He wouldn't want to wake her, and they thought, oh, what a keeper this guy is, right? Went to her colonoscopy, all that kind of stuff. So there were problems from the get-go with his family. His family did not like Shannon. In fact, they go more to not like her. They think she is the worst thing that ever happened to him, basically, okay? That if he had not met her, their son would have not done this. They're in a lot of denial. He's in a lot of denial, okay? He doesn't want to be defined by this one moment. So it's hard to talk about this case without going forward. I'm trying to bring it back to where we were all. So I'm not going to go into everything. I'm going to try to take you how we all went through this when we followed it from the beginning. So what happened is, the first time he went to court, he came in with that crazy, Shannon did it, and then he killed the kids. And then by November, he entered a plea. The plea was that he killed everyone, and that the death sentence would be taken off the table, and he would spend the rest of his life in prison with no chance of parole. And when he was sentenced, we heard victim statements from Sandra Rusak and from Frank Rusak and from Frankie Rusak. Frankie Rusak was unable to read his because it was too emotional. But the paternal grandparents said they wanted to prepare a victim's impact statement. However, it appears to have just been a ruse on Cindy Watts, who is Chris's mother, because instead of a victim's impact statement, she hardly mentioned the victims, okay? But turned her attention to her son, who was not a victim, but yet she was allowed to continue this, which I just think was completely wrong of the judge to let it go on, completely disrespectful to the victims. Completely. And that is just the start of a lot of people's disdain for Cindy Watts. As we began to see the discovery being released around Thanksgiving last year, we were privy to the interviews, we were privy to the documents, and so much about this case. And Shannon, she worked for a company called Thrive, and it's nutritional supplements and this and that, okay? It's a network marketing company. She created videos almost every day, and those videos let people get to know her. They let people get to know the kids, right? So as we got more invested in this, we began to feel closer to Shannon, and like she was still alive, like she was, you know, a friend, another type of blogger, and really grew close to her. Well, I should say some did. There was another camp, which we could call the Watts camp, or the Watts fangirls, that despised her. Not only, I mean, trashed her from beginning to end, and said basically that she brought this on herself because she was successful and determined, and they said she lived above her means and she spent too much money and she didn't spend enough time with her children and all kinds of things. And they just bashed her, and then that bashing went into bashing the parents and bashing the brother. And Facebook groups were created that did that. YouTube creators were doing that. There were channels that just bashed her. When people got more into the discovery, some of those creators started to say they saw the light. I'm sorry, I'm from New York. I'm a skeptic. I believe those, first of all, here's the thing. I don't see how anybody could have said those things about her from the get-go. There's nothing there to warrant any of that. Some of the severe ridicule that was put on by other creators was beyond disgusting. In recent weeks after that discovery, some of these creators said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Plunder," this was a channel that just bashed from beginning to end. They're the ones that made me how does that channel make you think that? Do you have a brain? It's just that they don't take responsibility for their own actions. And we're seeing a lot of this flip-flopping on YouTube, okay? Which I go which way the wind blows kind of thing. No, that's not the way I was. That's not the way I am. I have always maintained that Shannon had nothing to do with what was done to her or the children. Nothing. It didn't matter if she was bossy. Anyone can be bossy. I'm bossy. That doesn't mean that you get to murder someone. And by bossy, when I say bossy, I don't mean it in a yelling and screaming way. I mean that we take charge. We have a plan. We're determined. And that is, we have a drive to us. That's what I mean by bossy. Okay? Shannon had a drive. She was determined. She got things done. She was a tremendous organizer. How I wish. She could teach me how to organize the way she did, because that was amazing. But she was a wonderful person, and in no way did she contribute to her murder. And to say so is just ridiculous, and it went beyond to blame the parents. And there were even some saying stuff about the kids. And then there were even accusations that the baby wasn't her. It went ugly. And then they came out and they started switching sides. I'm sorry, I just don't trust people that flop like that. I'm sorry, I don't. And I've been right about almost every one of them, that their motives were not real. Not at all. So, anyway, as we started reading this discovery, how did I start, covering the Watts case? It was back in December. I had poured over that discovery, just poured over it. I'm very research-based. And there were things that, I had so many questions. And still, we were hearing stuff from the Watts camp, and these groups popping up, and these creators popping up that were bashing Shannon and everything. And I had a lull in my blog. I have a very popular blog, but I was bogged down with it. It was the holiday gift guide, which is very, very busy, and my website was having issues. We're working on settling them with my host, but it gave me a few days of which I recorded a video just of my feelings, right? I recorded it probably 6 times before I put it up, and I was still ambivalent, about putting it up. But when I did, something happened. The views started to go, to like 100, then 500. This is all within the day. 1,000, 2,000. They kept going. And I was like, I remember 13,000. I'm like, 13,000. Just put it up yesterday. And it was just flying. And people were relating to me, and they were saying, you're saying the things that I'm saying. Please make another video. Please. And, you're talking sense and all this stuff. So I ended up connecting to this community and everything and with you guys. And we've never looked back, frankly. But we're a bunch of like-minded individuals that want facts and not fluff and research everything. So as we go through this, for anyone new, I want you to know that we're going to be looking at facts, okay? I'll direct you to, pages in the discovery that say the things that we're looking at, okay? So one of the first things that happened after this plea deal and the discovery was that Cindy Watts went on Denver TV stations bashing Shannon. She went with Ronnie on one as well. The Rusak family got very upset and they issued a statement. Okay, and that further increased disdain for Cindy. Then when you started to analyze the interview, especially the interview with Chris, with his father came in there. And they started to go through this narrative of what happened. And his father seemed not to even be shocked that his grandchildren were dead. It didn't seem at all as it was the first time he was hearing it. In fact, again, he didn't break down and people say, oh, maybe he did. He didn't even have a reaction. Not much, except for just like, oh gosh, son, something like that. But he was immediately on scheme patrol, okay? And I will leave a link in this video to those interrogation videos where you can watch them. And I do put little notes up in there. So I would say that's what you should do next, is watch those videos if you haven't. And you'll see. It's ridiculous. But he starts saying that she was bipolar, she was narcissistic. Well, who's saying this? Cindy's saying it. Cindy's saying all this stuff. So, hey, how come you guys are here? We're supposed to be private. Anyway, I don't know if you're still here or not. I think it went to private, so that's good. So somebody's going to get really freaked when they see that later, because they're going to think I'm talking to them. So I'm going to put the links in the video. You can check it out. That, and there's also Ronnie's interview. He's very, very difficult to hear, but that's another one that you should try to listen to. I know that I had someone try to translate it, and I'm going to put that translation in here at some point, and probably maybe even go over that, subtitle that interview. It's very, very difficult to hear the man. And then just some other videos I have with reading transcripts and things. I'll try to link as many as I can in here so that you can start catching up. But there is a whole playlist on the Chris Watts stuff, the case. And at that point, everyone was delving into what was going on. Now, a lot of people, there were creators that were starting to go with conspiracy theories. They were trying to see things in shadows that, I don't see. We were starting to hear a lot of things like that. There were other creators that were sticking to the facts like we did here. And there was another confession that came out. And that confession came out in March. Excuse me. Came out in March. And Chris told a very different tale. But if you listen to that, and again I have the links to, it's a long, long interview with the same CBI agents that were there at the confession and the detective from the Frederick Police Department that were there. He says disturbing things like the children were not murdered in the house, but then he doesn't fill in the blanks there. So I'm going to discuss a lot of that with you guys. And I think, just delve into the facts of the case. So what happened here, so to sum this up, I'm just going to go right now. We have Chris on his front porch. That's where most people met Chris Watts for the first time, from the public. And most people thought, oh boy, this guy is guilty. This guy is guilty like crazy. We saw then he blamed his wife, and then he took a plea deal. Now, the plea deal robbed the public of a trial, which really didn't sit well with the public because there were so many questions. Luckily, we had this immense discovery and subsequent dumps after that. I think we have 3 other dumps of information, full of interviews, full of, videos, and full of police cams and everything to go through. And go through we did. After Chris took the plea deal, he was soon transferred to a Wisconsin prison. And it was very evident in March when the agents went up there that he liked this prison, and it was much cushier, if you will, than the Weld County Jail, where he was told how to commit suicide, to the Colorado prison that he was in for just a little bit before they transferred him. And he didn't have it so good there, okay? And I have gone over his the prison reports and stuff like that, which again we'll go into it. But then people were very upset about this newest confession until it seemed like it wasn't truthful, and everything didn't add up to it being truthful. So you probably either, some of you I know think he may have murdered 1 child at the site, but not 2. However, we get to another confession because there's someone called Sherlyn Cadle who wrote to Chris in prison and then said she visited him and spent many hours with him talking on the phone and getting letters, and she just came out with this book. The problem with the book is that she doesn't even have facts right, and most of the stuff is taken straight from the discovery. The only new information is that Chris supposedly killed his children twice. He says that he strangled them and then smothered them at the site. When they got up, he said they got up. They were strangled at home in their beds. They got up. They saw what was happening after he killed Shannon by strangling her. And so he was not in a rage, he said, and he was mad at the children because they were not dead and that they got up. And he was mad at Shannon. That's why he dumped her in the grave the way he did. So he had all these different explanations, which seemed like another load of horse crap. And I don't know. It's just, I think it's so hard to compartmentalize everything when you know so much. And I'm trying just to kind of put it for the newbies. So we have what do we have? His first confession that Shannon did it. We have his second confession that he killed the girls at the site. We have his third confession that he killed the girls twice. Okay? But Chris seems to be responding to what's in social media. Chris seems to be responding. He wants to be in the spotlight. His story is very similar to one of Chris Longo. And that's a man that killed his children and his wife, and he kept changing the story. Okay, he's on death row in Oregon, and still we don't know what it is, and each time tried to make it a little more horrific. And there's schools of thought on why he's trying to make it more horrific. It may be because what he really did doesn't seem as bad to him then if he makes it really horrific. Okay, because then he says, well, I didn't do that at least, right? And I didn't do that, which I think is probably the case. But he doesn't want to be defined by that one moment, that one event. He is totally delusional, okay? He acts like he's a little boy. He thinks he will get out of prison. He wishes he was in Europe, he would be out of prison. He wishes he was in California And he says that he would like to go into the ministry and be a chaplain and help people. And that is just this mask that he wears. He didn't snap. He wasn't in any rage. This is who he was. This is who he was. And for that minute, he stopped hiding it. Okay? He was, you see him loading the truck. He wasn't in any rage. As I've said many times before, I load my dishwasher in more of a rage than he loaded his truck. So he's just a liar, just a complete liar. Anyway, so Sherilyn Cadle comes out with this book. So this book drops, and it is just edited so poorly. Spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, run-on sentences, misspellings of people's names, of Bella's name, of the Rusak's name. Horrid stuff. Top of that, there's another writer, Kathleen, who's writing a book with Cindy Watts. Well, that information was leaked a few weeks ago. And there's so many lies there. You see, at first, when I went through that and the disgustingness, see, the background here is I was contacted by a friend of the Watts family, probably back in January or February, saying that I might have had my facts wrong. Well, I didn't know what she was talking about. Well, she was talking about clearly that I didn't know about Shannon. And again, the Shannon Bash Fest. She was aligned with the with the Watts. She wanted to tell me their version. I don't care to hear their version. She was trying to smooth me a little bit because she was telling me, oh, I agree with this, I agree with that, you're right about this, made it seem like she really wanted my input. I thought we were going to try to bring some amount of peace between the two families. I went to our audience. I said, what would the Watts need to do? Well, at the very minimum, they would need to offer this apology to come out and rectify all of this stuff they said about Shannon. And then when I told that to this person, they changed their tune completely. Cindy never said she's going to apologize, and Cindy never said she's going to do this. Like she was insistent, I'm not coming to apologize. I have nothing to apologize for. But then again, the narrative came out that, oh, Cindy was sorry for what she did. Cindy loves Shannon. Meanwhile, a book gets leaked where Cindy is just not only bashing, she says her son was perfect. Then he met Shannon. That is exactly what it says. And it goes into bash her and her family throughout. Cindy hasn't changed an iota. So when I brought that to the audience's attention, I got another text from this person that said, I had it all wrong. Those were Cindy's notes. They were never supposed to be out, and they're not going to be in the book. Well, now she just changed her tune again, and says that stuff that was leaked is Cindy's part in the book. So that ignited a whole hullabaloo, if you will. And now there is that writer that supposedly released or had the chapter read by some other creators where Frank Rusak went in and said that is BS. So more craziness surrounding this case, and that's why I want to deal with facts. And we will deal with facts. The facts in this case don't need to be exaggerated because its facts are more intense than any thriller could ever be on TV, which they are now making a movie on Lifetime that's due out in 2020. There is another true crime novelist, we just learned that last night, that is making a real true crime book. Not Sherilyn Cadle is, this is her first book, and you'll see why. Okay, so we've gone through the reviews of that book. So anyway, with everybody pouring over the videos and everything, I want to get some facts out. So I guess we'll start with the beginning, right? Shannon's born in New Jersey. The family moves to North Carolina. She meets Chris. They meet. There's problems with an engagement party and invitations that I'm going to just read to you in Sandra Rusak's words what happened here, okay? This is from the Discovery, okay? And this was something that was sent to Detective Dave Baumhauer. So this is written by Sandy Rusak. In 2009, Shanann built her house in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Cindy goes through this in her book and gives a rebuttal of each one. And I've gone through that in a video as well, which I'll try to link. Shanann built her house in Charlotte, North Carolina, battling her lupus. Her friend told her about her cousin Chris, saying he's a very nice guy, quiet, etc. So Shanann got a request from him on Facebook. Months later, she called me saying, "Mom, I met a nice guy. He is a mechanic." I said, "As long as you're happy and he is good to you." A few months after that, Shanann and Chris had a family gathering, and Frank, I, and his parents had a cookout. They were floored when they saw her house. Absolutely true. But instead of being floored in a good way, of course, Cindy puts a whole different spin on it and says that, why does this girl have this house and it's too big and it's got three, so I think she didn't understand, like living room, dining room, family. I don't know what she didn't understand, but she just said she didn't understand, how big it was and how she could have it, and that she drove a Cadillac Escalade and something must be wrong, instead of just being happy. But yeah, she rebutted that. Anyway, they were floored when they saw her house. Shanann was a hard worker and wanted this to eventually sell and make a profit. To keep doing so, eventually be mortgage free. So she wanted to keep building, selling, selling. And that Shanann comes from a family of contractors. So Shanann was eager to please his parents, and she waited on them hands and foot. When Shanann left the back porch, and it was just Sandy and Cindy Watts leaned over and said to Shanann's mother, "Shanann was married before?" I said, "Yes, just like your daughter was," because Jamie Watts, lovely Jamie Watts, had a marriage that lasted about as fast as a blink. At the Watts family put their whole life savings into and went into debt. Cindy, that knows how to manage money so well. So anyway, she then later said, "I just don't see it." And Sandy said, "You don't see what?" And she said, "Well, I don't feel or see that your daughter loves my son." Sandy said she knew she was going to be a thorn in the marriage because Sandy said her mother-in-law was the same way. So every time we had cookouts, his mom and sister were very quiet and distant. We weren't accepted. They made that known. So forward to the engagement party. Shanann and I shopped for food, wine, etc. We spent a lot. Jamie, Chris's sister, wanted all the invitations so she could help. So Shanann told me, "Mom, Jamie wants to help send some of the invitations. What do you think? She's accepting me?" So Shanann's trying to find out, is she accepting me? Should I do it? Should I? Okay. I'm going to let her do it. So this mom and sister prepped food and cross-contaminated everything. She means Cindy and Jamie Watts. Cross-contaminated everything. So Shanann couldn't eat any of it. Gluten-free, nothing. Everything was made with gluten. So thank God I made lots of food. Food that I brought. At least my daughter could eat. So as the night went on, Shanann and I went in the bathroom, and Shanann told me, "Mom, I had like 80 invites, and only immediate family came." So Shanann called people the next day to learn that they never received an invitation. Shanann was devastated. Shanann and Chris were upset, so they knew not to ask again. Then came the wedding. No one from his whole family came. Can you imagine not going to your son's wedding? Can you imagine? That's the kind of mother and father, because Ronnie didn't go either, nor did Jamie. That's the kind of family. Doesn't go to their son's wedding. Just his grandmother and uncle. Cindy didn't get along with her mother. No mom, dad, sisters, aunts, or cousins came. No one. Chris spoiled Shanann and vice versa. They were so in love, and they were a great team. He moved to Colorado and lived with Shanann's friend for 1 year while they were building their house. Everything was great. Shanann said something on Chris's Shanann saw something on Chris's private parts that didn't look normal. They went to the doctor. It's cancer, so it was removed. She saved his life. Then Shanann got pregnant with Bella Marie. Everyone was so excited and happy. Shanann and Chris were wonderful parents. Actually, the Watts had not spoken to Shanann or Chris from the wedding up until it was posted on Facebook that she was expecting Bella. Those are Cindy's own words in Cindy's own book. Okay, take them for what you will. Chris and Shanann were working at a Ford dealership in Longmont. Shanann was selling cars. Chris was the head mechanic. Cindy says no, he was not the head mechanic. A great team. I think Sandra was just trying to make him something more that he wasn't. You should be happy, Cindy. Shanann was top sales. Then Bella came, so Shanann stopped working because of a high-risk pregnancy. She was a trooper, though, through the whole thing. Both families seemed happy. Chris's sister never flew to Colorado at any time when they were out there. Cindy and Ronnie came 2 times a year. Shanann worked at Children's Hospital at night and also sold 31 bags, travel bags on the side. Everything was good. Shanann got pregnant with Celeste. The pregnancy was really rough with Shanann with her lupus. It was very high risk. But only this one was worse for Shanann. Water weight gain, severe back pain, shortness of breath, pains in her chest, fatigue, and exhaustion. My husband and I sold everything but our house and moved out there to live with them, to help our daughter in every way we could. Frank and I had work to pay our bills, too. We were there for 15 months. They moved in with Chris and Shanann. They lived in the basement for 15 months while they also, Sandy worked at a salon, and Frank, I believe, worked for Lowe's or Home Depot. Chris's mom came out to watch the girls for a few days while Shanann and Chris went on a business trip with Lavelle, her company. 4 nights and 5 days, and during that time we were not allowed to see our grandchildren or even eat dinner with them as soon as we got home. She would bring them upstairs, and she stayed upstairs. She wouldn't let us hold them or anything. I found that very odd. One day I asked her why. She said, "What the hell am I here for then?" She screamed in my face in front of my granddaughters and said that I was very controlling. I was just like, wow. I texted Shanann over and over again, and she said, "Relax, Mom. I'll take care of it when we get home." It was ridiculous. I never spoke to Chris's mom again. I had enough. After 15 months, I moved back home. It was hard to leave, but I felt it was best. It was, okay, that repeated twice. I have been home now 17 months, and my whole family is dead. My beautiful daughter and my beautiful grandchildren, all dead. Everything seemed fine. Our daughter never spoke about anything bad. She did speak to us about bankruptcy, a lot of debt with all the medical bills. Bella and Celeste were back and forth to doctors, misdiagnosed for 2 years. I told Shanann that they had asthma and that she needed to fire that doctor. One day she went in and the physician's assistant was there and she diagnosed them with asthma. Finally, the girls were doing great, other than earplugs and the girls being very allergic to tree nuts, which would have caused their death. Celeste was born with her esophagus too small, and they went in 3 times to enlarge it. Steroids like crazy to help her breathe for 1.5 years or longer, all until they were diagnosed with asthma. Then Shanann with her neck surgery, which out of pocket was $25,000 they owed, so that's why there's so much debt. I noticed that when we would FaceTime every night for 4 years straight. Looking back, late May 2018, when we started to FaceTime, Chris was putting the phone all over the room, ceiling, floor, etc. I said, "Chris, are you all right?" And then he would FaceTime normally. Before Shanann came to North Carolina, Celeste had a rash in her private area, and she went to get a face cloth and some cream. Chris had the phone. I said to Chris, "Let me see how bad it is." Being that I am old, so I couldn't see, so I said, "Wait, let me move my screen," because I couldn't see. He put it right on her privates. Oh, I was so mad. Shanann wanted to come for 6 weeks this summer so she could introduce the girls to Chris's sister Jamie, who never met Celeste or Uncle Frankie or son. Before they started the year back to school, dance classes, etc. It was the best time to do it. We were thrilled. Shanann stayed the week here, then weekends with Chris's parents. The first weekend was great. with Chris's dad and family. However, the following weekend was a different story. Saturday was rough for Shannon. She was protecting her children from peanuts in every form: ice cream, a bowl full of nuts, and open razor blades just laying around the house. There's some issues with Ronnie in the past, being addicted to cocaine out of Chris's own mouth. And I don't know if he with the razor blades, but I don't know. Shannon called her father, "Come pick me up now, please." Shannon said Cindy was trying to give the kids ice cream with peanut chips in it. I believe they are pistachio chips, though, because it's tree nuts. But anyway, Shannon and Cindy asked Cindy what kind of ice cream it was, and Cindy said, "Oh, relax, it's just ice cream." Shannon said, "Please let me read the ingredients." Cindy told my daughter that she was scary, so the girls walked outside to play with Jamie, Chris's sister. So after Shannon got done explaining to Cindy how dangerous the nut allergy is to the girls, Cindy ignored Shannon. Shannon went outside. Jamie walked in. The girls walked back in, and as Shannon walked in the kitchen, she noticed a large bowl of nuts now sitting on the table. That wasn't there 2 minutes before. So Shannon called me and explained everything. She said, "Mom, I'm being double teamed." And I said, "What?" She told me everything. But when she told me about the razor blades, I said, "What?" She changed the subject really quick. My daughter knows how I would have been, and that I would have been there and caused a big scene. I love my family. I protect them. I said, "Dad's on his way." She got home and was beside herself. I was furious along with her. That someone that you trust would try to get her child sick or die feeding them nuts, razor blades? Shannon told 4 people this: me, Frank, Sandra Goronda, and Nicole Atkinson is her friend, the one that went to the house on the day that Shannon was missing. She called Chris that night, and she was so upset. Chris said he will handle it. So Shannon did never go back again to see them. None of Chris's family came to Celeste's birthday party, which was just at Sandra's house, or at event, whatever. It was right there, July, and they didn't go. Nope, they decided to hold a grudge instead. But Cindy said, "I sent her presents." Oh, that's lovely of you, Cindy. None of Chris's family came to Celeste, and Cindy sent Celeste's package out to Colorado, which is still there in a box at the house. So Shannon and the girls had a wonderful time the rest of the trip there. When Chris came for his week here and Shannon 6 weeks, Shannon picked him up at the airport with the girls. They were so excited to see their dad. That set the alarm off for running up to him. Chris spent the day with his parents, and Shannon dropped him off at the nursing home to see his grandma. Shannon and the girls came back here. Chris was acting really weird to Shannon. He didn't have time to speak to her, and then he was not going to stay, and then he was going to stay down there. This was the night before they were leaving because there was a storm with no streetlights not working. Chris's dad brought him back here to our home. Shannon and Chris spoke on our back porch for a few hours about how he has been and the nut stuff, and at his mom's house. Chris was distant to Shannon, okay with the girls with us. Shannon was vomiting all night. Now there's another, he says, at this time he gave her an oxy, 80 milligrams, to try to make her lose the baby. And he said he didn't get up because he wanted her to lose the baby. Chris didn't get up to see how his wife was. They left for Myrtle Beach, and Frank went with them for a couple of days. Being that it was our granddaughter's first time at the beach, Frank left them. I came a day and a half to be with the girls, and I had a blast. Chris was very quiet, doing his own thing and ignoring Shannon. I said to my daughter, "Is everything okay?" She said, "Chris is Chris." So we were at the beach, and we went to dinner, and Chris drove Shannon and the girls, but there was no room, so I had to drive behind them. I was doing 83 miles an hour to catch up with him, and texting Shannon, "Why is he driving like that? Tell him to slow down. I am not in a race to go to dinner." At dinner, Chris left the table quite a few times, very silent. He was ignoring his kids and his wife. Cece was being funny, and he walked away. I left the next day, and they came 2 days later. I asked Shannon to stay here with the girls. She said Chris has good insurance for the girls. So they went back home to Colorado. I'm devastated. The only reason Chris got fit was because diabetes runs in his family and Shannon wanted him to live forever. And that is signed Sandra Rusak. Okay, so like I said, you should listen, if you haven't, to Frank and Frankie's interviews. And then we can... Oh, there's one other thing that Frank put this in the Discovery. He had an interview, but this is an addendum to his interview. So when you listen to it, it's just said he's speaking here about June 21st to the 26th. Now, you see Frank went out there prior to them going to North Carolina because they went on a Lavelle trip. Then Shannon flew with her father to North Carolina. So he said, I noticed Chris was acting different with the girls. He was yelling at them, raising his voice with them, which made me look at him like, what are you doing? Also, when Shannon would FaceTime, which she did every day when she was here on vacation, she would ask him if he was going to pay attention to the girls. He was looking like he was looking at something else. And when he came here for the last week of vacation, the girls would not go to him. They would go to Mommy, and he didn't like that at all. Like, on his face, he was mad at them. I went to the beach with them for the first 3 days, and Celeste would say that my truck, talking about Papa's truck, Frank's truck, he said that I have a truck too. And she said, but that's my truck, talking about Papa's. The first night, he was very strange. He came out and laid on the floor in the living room where I was sleeping on the couch. I was watching TV, and when I shut the TV off, he sat up. I said, what are you doing? He said he had a backache and it would help him, but that was strange to me for him to be laying on the floor. Thinking about it, he was acting kind of distant because the girls wanted me more than him. It looked like he didn't mind. It looked like he didn't care. His mind was somewhere else. So we have that. And let's go back to Shannon being born in New Jersey, moving to North Carolina, meeting Chris, having this engagement party. Then they have the wedding. They move to Colorado. They live with a friend, and then they end up buying this large house on Saratoga Trail. They move into the house. Shannon starts, first you heard Sandy said she had those other jobs. Eventually she starts working with a company called Lavelle, starts making all of these videos. She starts being very successful in that business, like everything else she does. And they're going on free trips. She's earned a Lexus, all of that stuff. Chris has left the dealership, felt he was getting carpal tunnel syndrome. He ended up working for Anadarko, which is an oil company. And when he was working there, there was someone working in the office, Nicole Kessinger, and he ends up having an affair with her. And that affair started, there's controversy on that too. There's reports that she was searching and looking up Shannon back in 2017. And, she was searching for her in 2018. But she says they met, I think it was May of 2018, but they didn't get together till around Father's Day. And that's exactly right before they went on their trip that Frank was babysitting for. But right when they got back is supposedly when they started meeting, spent all of July together. He would stay at her house. He would just go home to take care of the dog, I guess have a call from Shannon, and then he would go to her house and stay there. Apparently she gave him a key. At some time, Shannon, of course, didn't know anything about that. And we can go more into that relationship. But when Shannon got back, there was an ultrasound to go to. He first went to pick up touch-up paint and stuff for her car at her truck at Toyota. Went there. She apparently didn't want him to go. He came back late. They did go to the sonogram. He didn't show any interest, really. They took the gender home in an envelope. Finally, Shannon didn't want to do a gender reveal because of Chris acting the way he did. She asked her friend to tell her what the sex was. It was a boy. She told Chris. They named the baby Nico. She thought things were getting better a little bit. She left him a note. She went on her trip to Arizona for Lavelle. And then She had sent him a book from Amazon about saving their marriage. He got it and threw it in the garbage. Meanwhile, she had her book there and was reading it and trying to work on things, really wanted to make this work for the sake of her family. She got home at 1:48 a.m. and Chris started loading his truck early that morning and left the house before 6 a.m. to drive to Anadarko. And Nicole Atkinson, her friend and business partner, came to the house around, it was early on. It was like, I think 10 o'clock, I think, when she first started coming. She called Chris because she could not get Shanann. Shanann's car was in the driveway. The car seats were in the car. The door had a latch on it, so even though she knew the code, you couldn't go in. So it didn't seem like Shanann left the house. The girls did not start their first day of school. In fact, Chris had called the school and said that they weren't going to be coming, that they were going to be moving. He was telling people that they were getting a divorce. He didn't want to come home. She called their friend Cassie. Cassie called Chris. She said, "You better get home." Nicole called the police for a welfare check. The police were there, Frederick police, when Chris got there. And Chris went and let them in. He looked like he's getting something out of the Lexus. He took a little time to get to the front door to let them in. And then he amazingly found her wedding ring right away, he said. Found her phone, couldn't figure out the password to turn it on. Nicole Atkinson knew that. And yet there was no trace. And he was not taken in, for questioning until the next day. And so we'll go into it from there, but that's the case in a nutshell. And, you can put in any questions you have or things you want me to go over if you're a new person on this case. Again, I'm going to try to put in as much information as I can, but just let me know. I think that's a starting ground for us. I'm trying to do this the best way that I can, and I hope that this is helpful for you just starting this case. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.